Namaskar, good morning, Salamat Pagi. So thank you so much, Ambassador Preeti Saran. I'm also very happy to see Suresh Prabhu sir, and I also saw Amaya, around. My former boss, Ambassador Jaydeep Majumdar is also here. Distinguished panelists, distinguished ambassadors, and members of Youth Summit. I'm so happy to be here, although, I have relinquished my job in the first week of August, and I came back to Delhi, transiting for my next posting, but I requested, for my ministry, if I could participate, and I really thank Dr. Ram Madhav, General Co-Chair, for inviting me for the Youth Summit. In fact, I have been fully involved in the preparation for 2023 Youth Summit, the 4th edition, and the 5th edition. I have always been in touch with India Foundation, also giving some ideas how to structure the program, etc. Most of the things about ASEAN-India relationship, I have already spoken about, and I don't have much to add. But let me put the things in the perspective in which we at the mission looked at the relationship and worked accordingly. So as all of us know, as soon as, Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, he assumed the office, during his first tenure, he made a qualitative shift in our relationship with ASEAN. Our policy changed from, early 90s of look east to the act east policy. So it has basically 4 important elements, the commerce, culture, connectivity, and capacity building. And then apart from this, Ambassador Ina has already mentioned, and other speakers also have mentioned about the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative. So these two are the broad policy frameworks. But what is the importance of ASEAN? Our leadership, have been consistent in saying that ASEAN is at the heart of India's Act East policy. Okay, this is at the policy levels, but it has to come onto the ground. Look at the seriousness with which our leadership, have been approaching to ASEAN. Prime Minister Modi himself, he has led, 11 ASEAN-India summits. He has participated in 11 ASEAN-India summits and 9 East Asia summits. So after, His Excellency, the King of Brunei, Prime Minister Modi Sahab is the most experienced, when it comes to the East Asia summit process. And even at the other ministerial level, at the foreign ministers level, at defense ministers level, our participation has been very, very consistent. And as Ambassador Jaydeep Majumdar has said that this is not only ASEAN-India relationship. ASEAN has different mechanisms: East Asia Summit process, ASEAN Regional Forum, ADMM plus, that is Defense Ministers Meeting plus, and expanded Maritime Forum. And India has always been participating in all these mechanisms. Now, this is about, the political orientation, but how does it, translate further into action? So, the trade figures were quoted that, India's ranking, for not the last year, but before that, 2 previous financial years, ASEAN was the 2nd largest trading partner of India. Last year, it is 4th largest. But, it's about ranking, it's one thing, but it's, 10 to 12% of India's global trade has been consistently happening with ASEAN, and that's, quite substantial. If you look at India's trade basket of, 1.1 trillion, basically there are 4 groups, one is ASEAN, European Union, China, and the United States, all in the range of 120 to 130 billion US dollars. In addition to this, and which dimension is going to become more and more important, is trade in services. We don't have the latest figures, but in 23, it was already $30 billion, and I'm sure that, it is increasing more. So, we are talking about, total trade in goods and services up to $150 billion. And it was mentioned yesterday about the investment. It's mainly because of Singapore, but more than 20% of, investment investment into India comes from ASEAN, that is $156 billion. And similarly, India's outbound investment, so around 20% of India's outbound investment also goes to ASEAN, but also mainly because of Singapore. It needs diversification. That is another 56 billion. Ambassador Preeti Saran has mentioned about one very important aspect, which is tourism. Now, all except for two countries, there is a direct connectivity, air connectivity between ASEAN and India. Now, Vietnam is a bright example that post-COVID, they started a direct flight, and now we have, 86 flights per week between Vietnam and India. Then, if you look at the figures, ASEAN is a very popular destination for Indian tourists. Like last year, 6 million Indian tourists traveled to ASEAN, which is, India is not very outbound traveling country. So 29 million, traveled abroad. So 20% of Indian tourists, they visited ASEAN member states. And similarly, out of first 10 tourist sending countries, there are two countries, Malaysia, of course, it ranks 6th, and Singapore 10th. They send tourists to India. Now, if you add the dimension of India's diaspora, so around 6.5 million of India's diaspora, they live in the ASEAN member states. So that is out of 36 million of India's total diaspora. So we are talking about roughly 16% of India's diaspora living. So if you look at, and of course, Ambassador Jaydeep Majumdar already has said about, 1700 kilometer long boundary, land boundary with Myanmar, and, maritime boundary with, number of ASEAN member states. So if you look, holistically at these figures, then probably ASEAN-India relationship could be among the top, with any regions, compared to any regions in the world. Now, this relationship does not stop only at the ASEAN-India mechanisms. One example is, for example, it is India's initiative, IPOI, and there is, ASEAN's initiative, OIP. So we have a joint statement and we do joint activities. There are 3 ASEAN members, who have, decided to join on, each pillar of, there are 7 pillars of Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative. So there are 3 countries from ASEAN, Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand. They have decided to choose. Then there is overlapping membership. We already talked about it, whether it is BRICS or BIMSTEC, the cooperation also happens. When, the Voice of Global South Summit happened, so 7 of the 10 ASEAN member states, they participated at a very high level. In fact, when we have difficult situation, now we don't talk about that group that much, but it was mentioned, in the previous session, non-aligned movement. So we still coordinate, our approaches on that. So, our relationship goes beyond the ASEAN-India framework. Of course, since youth is around, I must also talk. Okay, before coming to youth, I also mentioned about the defense and strategic dimension. See, we have become, comprehensive strategic partner, but it's not only words, So in the previous session, India's support to Myanmar was mentioned. Of course, and when it comes to, any kind of disaster relief, addressing that kind of issue, whether it was Yagi typhoon in Vietnam, and then, earthquake in Myanmar. So India is the first responder. Then, we are also having cooperation in transnational crime, especially related to cyber security, cyber-related matters. And then, for the first time in May 2023, we had ASEAN-India maritime exercise. Then, we also had ASEAN-India bilateral defense ministers meeting in 2022. So we are also developing the strategic dimension. So since youth is here, let me mention that, we do a lot of activities to bring youth, because, we have the civilizational past, all of us know, but it's, we are also duty bound to, pass it on to the next generation. And with keeping that in view, we have been consistently organizing few activities. ASEAN-India Music Festival, then there's, of course, the ASEAN-India Youth Summit, then we have ASEAN-India Artist Camp, and we also do it on the technical side, which is, ASEAN-India Startup Festival, and then we also have modified it, and, we call it as the ASEAN-India Scale Hub Festival. Then we do, this grassroots innovation program, where, basically all these programs are youth-oriented. Now, yesterday there was a session about, the youth should bring energy to, various dimensions of life, whether it is politics or culture, etc. So I also appeal to all of you, now, all these projects which I have mentioned, they have done by 35 plus people, so they have been, designed and implemented by 35 plus people, so according to the definition of youth, they have not been done by the youth, strictly speaking, within that definition. So I appeal to all of you that, you design projects, you look at the projects, I mean, everything is available, in the public domain. And when we have the next, ASEAN-India Youth Summit, I wish that at least, 4 to 5 projects which are designed by the youth, they are implemented. We have, there's no dearth of funds. The government of India has instituted 4 funds: ASEAN-India Cooperative Fund, Green Fund, Digital Fund, Science and Technology Fund. Money is, available, but good ideas are required. So with that, I'll stop. Thank you so much.